What's up, gamers? Welcome back to Game Brigade. My name is Brian, and today we're doing an episode of our Table Talk podcast kind of discussion series where we're going to be talking about the aspects of being a content creator and the types of games we have in our collection, and when we're selling games, what does that mean? And this all stems from a comment that I received from one of my subscribers, Sam S., and this is no shade to Sam, by the way. I'm just using your comment, Sam, to kind of address the questions, because these are questions that come up quite a bit. So let me go ahead and read in Sam's comment. I'll also have it right here for your guys' convenience so you can read it. Brian, I love your channel and have been subbed for years, but it's absolutely wild how many all-in pledges you have with unplayed expansions. There are even loads of second copies of games. Didn't you do something like a second all-in of Spirit Island even though you didn't like the game in the first place? Your Aeon's End video where you talked about how bad it made you feel getting too much content in the all-in was a long time ago now. So that kind of resonated with me because I do get these questions a lot, and I think that as audience members, it's a good idea to understand the context of where maybe I've been or where other content creators might be or have been, because it's kind of a different world. So let's reverse here, and we'll kind of address some of these points as we go. When I decided to do this board gaming content creation aspect, more than just because I've had this channel for a while, I was uploading like Star Wars, X-Wing, and Armada content to it, but just like once every 4 months, it was like sparse. And then one day I was like, you know what, I want to take this content further and really push the channel. So I decided to launch. You can go back and see some of my original videos. The studio space was completely different. All I had was this back wall with like 3 games in it. But I wanted to be a content creator in this board game space and talk about the hobby that I loved. But with that, there was a lot of chasing down the Joneses, or whatever that term may be, where you see other content creators in the space, even around the similar subscriber count, and the games they're getting, the games they're playing, and you feel like to be relevant in the space, you need to have somewhat of a similar either studio-looking space or knowledge of the games. So you have to go out and buy these games or add them to your collection. I mean, I was watching the time Board Game Co. started his channel, like doing content right around the same time I started mine. Jesse had been doing content for a bit, but he was just around like 5K subscribers at that time. So I'm watching these people because, I looked up to them and their content. And you're seeing like prevalence of top 10 lists or top games of all time. And so to feel like I was not a pretender in the space and to get as much knowledge as I could, I went out and bought as many games as I could, even at one time buying someone's collection, which I made a video about, so that I can add games to my collection so that I can play these games and eventually talk about them and doing whatnot. Fast forward a few years, in 2022, I realized this was a frickin' mistake, in the sense that I definitely didn't need to do any of that stuff. It was too much. I was buying too much, not able to play as much as I wanted to. Even at the amount of gaming that I do, for a man that just turned 40 years old, the amount of gaming that I do is really sometimes shocking that I have the time to do it. Like I game sometimes upwards of 5 times a week out of a 7-day period. That's a lot of gaming, and I still feel like I have games in my collection that I haven't gotten to or gotten enough attention to. So I stopped pretty much backing Kickstarter games in 2023. Like I said, you know what? Enough's enough. I can't do this anymore and keep backing games. But I still have a log of games from 2022, 2021, and 2020 that I've backed that either haven't arrived. Like they're finally starting to come through. And I even made videos where I talked to you guys where I'm like, oh my God, all of a sudden all these games from 2020, like Seventh Citadel, well, I can't think of anything off my top of my head, but a bunch of games like from 2020 all of a sudden just showed up literally at the same time. And you're like, oh my God, I'm a little inundated with too many games. So I have effectively, at this point, pretty much stopped backing games. And that was some of the reasons why I've had to stop doing some of my weekly series that I was doing, like where I would do Kickstarter games each week, or what's coming out, what's hot, what's new. Because the more that I would invest time into researching these games for the channel, the more likely I was wanting to buy these games because everything sounds so cool. I'm like, yeah, this game sounds great. So I'd cover it for the channel or learn about it and then end up backing it. So for my own self-preservation, I had to step away from doing some of the Kickstarter coverage so I wouldn't back these games as much. And now I finally found myself in a space where I feel kind of more confident with my self-control in that manner that I can cover a game and not back it. But Sam also brought up about having, excess copies of games. This is a relatively new phenomenon. And, why? Well, in 2024, I don't know what changed or if anything changed, but publishers started reaching out to me more to send me review copies themselves. So before, I had to buy a lot of the games myself, either pledging them or buying them on retail or finding ways. Sometimes friends in the player group have the game so that I can actually do a review of these games to produce for the channel. But then publishers started reaching out and say, hey, Brian, we'd like you to cover our game. For example, Euthia, which is one of the games that I just listed for sale. So I was like, great, I would love to cover Euthia. Euthia shows up. And then my friend in this situation, Sean, goes, Brian, I actually have the all-in of Euthia, and I haven't had a chance to play it, so let's play ours. And I'm like, perfect. I don't have to open Euthia, so if it's not a copy that I necessarily need to play or need to own or whatever. And I have my friend who has his all-in pledge who hasn't had a chance to even play it. So to me, it was a win-win. I'm playing my friend's game. We're getting all the content that's more than what I was sent from, in that situation, Euthia, because I just got the core box. I get to experience the expansions and some of the deluxe add-ons and whatever, all the things that he bought. And then he's happy because he's actually getting to play the game that he bought that he hasn't had a chance to table. So we get a bunch of games in with that. And then I get to and then at that point, I get to go, okay, is Euthia a game I need in my collection myself, or am I content just playing my friend's copy whenever he wants to dive into another scenario? And so that's why I eventually, decide to sell that game if it doesn't really feel like I need it in my personal collection. And that kind of also came up because now I've got a whole slew of games where I don't even have room anymore in my shelving wall to store these games, and I do not want games sitting on the floor. Like, that's something I really don't want. So that's why when I say like, oh, here's a brand new copy of a sealed game, it's usually because it was sent to me for review and I found ways to cover this game without having to technically open that box, which to me is fine. It's a way for me to, I still covered the game. So I did the obligations that the publisher wants. I covered the game. I gave them my ideas, but I'm also able to decide if I want this game in my collection or not. And there's games that I've kept in my collection, such as Red Rising. What am I looking at over here? Actually, it's hard to say because I haven't gotten too many review copies of games. It's kind of rare. Like, it's all kind of relatively new. Now I'm like looking around and I don't really have any review copies. Tainted Grail. And not even a review copy, the new Tainted Grail. So that's the other thing that's kind of relatively new. When I would cover crowdfunding games, normally it's just they send you a prototype. I covered it for the channel, and it was mostly like payment through exposure. Like, because I'm getting a prototype that's relatively exciting for people, my payment is the exposure I get for people watching my videos, and then I would send the prototype on to someone else. So there was no money transactions. I wasn't even getting copies of the game, so I'd end up having to pledge the games myself. Just recently, within the past like 8 to 10 months, I have been getting kind of like complimentary copies of games for games that I've covered. And so that's kind of new to me. And sometimes I ended up backing the game with no idea that I was going to get another copy of the game in the back end. So that's why I'm like, okay, well, this is an extra copy. So I'm going to have to sell this copy because I don't need two. That happened recently with, it was the Lords of Ragnarok. I backed Lords of Ragnarok, and then Awakened Realms sent me a copy. I was like, oh, wow, that's super exciting. I didn't expect that. They didn't really say anything about it. So I sold my additional copy because there was no reason to keep it. So that's kind of the idea there about, you have to understand the realm of a content creator is kind of different than the realm of a a standard gamer, even though I don't really consider myself any different. It's just that the content that we then produce for you when we're doing, Gen Con hauls, and they're seeing creators with 50 games. Guys, a majority of those games are free review copies. It's not financially smart to really go and spend that much money in a game, and I don't know how many people can continually do that. So just like when you watch a person and they have like these massive collections of games, I actually very much respect when a channel goes, this was given to me for review, and I try to do that. Like these games were given to me. There was one person who did a video and they had like, here's my haul, it's a huge selection, and then they drew like an outline of, these games were given to me by publishers for review. These are games I bought. I love that kind of transparency, because people might think that this is normal, and then they go to their conventions and do the same, feeling like they want to, be like a content creator that they look up to. So it's much different. Now, let's see what else. What else? Didn't you do something like buy a second All-In of Spirit Island, even though you didn't like the game in the first place? Yes, I did. Obviously, it's an all-in. I don't know if it was an all-in, but it's pretty much close to an all-in. Spirit Island is a game that I have not had a historically good time playing. I sold my copy to actually one of my subscribers in the Discord, picked it up. And then one of my friends who was going through some family issues, needed some extra money, and he messaged me and said, hey, Brian, do you want to buy some of my games? And I said, sure, I'll buy some of your games. So I bought Spirit Island from him. I bought Red Rising from him. I also bought Darkest Dungeon, and paid for the additional money for the extra stuff from them, because I was like, yeah, I'll help you out. Plus I'm getting games, and maybe I'm wrong about my opinion of Spirit Island. Like, that's totally relevant. Maybe I'm wrong. Everyone in the comment section seems to tell me that I was way off base on my thoughts of this game. So why not bring it back into the collection? I'm getting a better deal on it than if I bought it all myself. So that's why. But again, like, there's context to everything, and I try my hardest to be transparent with you guys so that you're aware of when things are coming in or going. When I do my keep or sell segment of the show, I want people to be aware of, like, hey, this is an extra copy or whatever. And I try to put in the description as much as I can, especially if it's covering an individual game, my relationships with the publisher, if it's paid, not paid, supplied, what's going on. There's a disclosure section. I got 2 little emoji red flags, so that way you guys are aware. If you have any questions about any game that I'm talking about, and so normally if it's like a roundup of a bunch of games, I don't really have disclosures, because that's a lot of disclosures. Most part, that's just me doing a roundup like this. Like, I'm not going to be like, I purchased ARCs myself. That just seems weird. But like, let's say I'm doing an actual review of Spirit Island. In the disclosures, I'll say, this is not a sponsored video, something like that. That way you guys are aware, or the publisher supplied me a copy of this game. Like, if I don't know, I don't have any copies around me that were supplied, but Expedition, Stonemeyer Games supplied me a copy of Expeditions for my review. In that situation, my friend had a copy that he was dying to play, so we played his copy. Even before Expedition showed up, we were playing his copy, and we got a bunch of games in, and then it showed up, and I'm like, you know what? I don't love this game. I've played it enough to know that I don't love this because there's some issues with it, so I decided to sell it. I mean, I don't know. I made my video, and it goes from there. So I wanted to just talk about this. It was easier for me to do this rather than typing a long reply to Sam's comment that might get lost in the ether of the internet. Maybe he'll see it, but someone else won't. So I wanted to at least address this so people kind of be aware of, don't look at content creators and be like, man, look at all the stuff they do or all the games they're buying. There's a lot of stuff going on in the back end that's completely different than what's going on for other creators. I mean, even my friend Louis, when he joined our group, and he was backing a lot of games, I was like, Louis, don't back games. Just stop buying games. And he has, because I was like, you're gonna regret it. Like, you think you want to chase these people's collections. You see people saying, check out my collections on Reddit, and you have these massive walls. It's like, I don't think that brings as much happiness. Now, there is a part of this hobby that's part of the collection space. I made a video with Quackalope regarding, are you a gamer or a collector? Because that was a question that I had. Like, Am I more of a gamer or am I more a collector? Because sometimes some of these games in my collection do bring me joy. I enjoy having them in the space, but I also don't like the clutter that it provides. So there's kind of, it's part of the curating. And again, that's why my channel has been focusing a lot on the collection side of this hobby, the curating your collection, letting go of games, how to sell games, what's coming, what's going. So that's kind of been like why my channel has shifted focus over the last year and a half from Kickstarter to let's more talk about FOMO and what's coming in and going out, and giving you the aspects as me as a gamer of what I'm trying to deal with as I navigate the space, just like you guys are. So I hope this was helpful in any way. I haven't done one of these table talk podcasts, like discussion videos, in a bit, but they're kind of fun. Maybe if this goes well and you guys enjoy it, we can do more of these, kind of talking about my thoughts on things. I was going to, this is, the video's over at this point, but whatever, we'll just talk. I was going to actually navigate and like kind of bullet point out my ideas and things I want to talk about. But as I sat down with my pen and I was like, okay, let's write this out. I just said, you know what, I'm just going to speak. I just want to talk and figure it out as we go. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes I actually will finish recording and I'll be like, dang it, I forgot to mention this. I do that a lot. Sometimes I'll you ever get into, but this happened to me a lot in high school, where, your bully will pick on you. And then a week later you realize, I should have said this. That would have been the perfect response. Kind of like that, I'll film this video and then a couple hours later I'll be like, dang it, I should have mentioned this. I do that a lot actually in, my coverage, where I'll do a review of a game and I'll have something in my head prior to filming that I really want to talk about, some mechanic or something that was kind of profound for me, and then I'll film the video and I'll freaking not mention it, and it drives me up the wall. And I'm like, dang it, Brian, how did you forget that thing? So that's why you might notice in some of my videos I actually keep notes now next to me, because I want to make sure I remember to talk about things that I thought were important. But this time I decided not to. I decided to just go for it and talk. So hopefully this was relevant in any way. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. This has been good for me. It was a birthday week for us here, so I was happy to finally turn 40 and move on to the next stage of life. So that's it. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.